Hello, my friends. Welcome. Have you ever found yourself thinking, wait a second, I thought all of this listening and emotional validation was supposed to help my kid. Why do they seem even more emotional now that I'm listening to them? Maybe you've been working hard to become a more connected parent. You've been listening more, validating more, slowing down. You haven't been jumping in to fix or solve. You haven't been shutting feelings down. You've been coming close, staying calm, and offering connection. And then something surprising happens. Your child seems even more emotional. You're seeing more tears, more frustration, more tantrums, more of their big feelings, not less. And a worried part of you naturally arises asking, is this really working? Did I make this worse? Am I doing something wrong? Why does my child seem more upset now that I'm listening? If you've ever wondered that, you're not alone. In fact, it's one of the most common questions parents ask when they begin shifting toward a more connected way of parenting. And today, I'd like to explore a possibility that might help make sense of what's happening. Because sometimes when feelings become more visible or more audible, it doesn't necessarily mean they're getting bigger. Sometimes it means they're no longer being carried alone inside. It might mean that your child's finally feeling safe enough to bring their hard feelings to you, to share their hard feelings with you. And today, I brought a red balloon in with me, and I'd like us to imagine that this balloon is like an emotional bladder. This emotional bladder metaphor offers a way to help us understand what can happen with feelings. When children move through life, little experiences get added to their emotional bladder. And those experiences add up. And highly sensitive children tend to fill their emotional bladder even more quickly than a typical child because more experiences tend to overwhelm their sensitive systems more easily. So, let me show you a common example, a kind of a regular morning in the household. Let's say that your kid wakes up feeling cranky. Dad was gone when they woke up, and dad had promised to spend the morning with them doing something special. And then the eggs that you were making for them had a kind of smell to them that they didn't recognize because you used a new kind of cheese or something, and there's no way that their tummy would let them eat it. And they really didn't want to go to school yet without seeing their dad. They didn't want to go to school yet before playing that special game they were supposed to play. And then they felt really rushed when you were asking them to get their shoes on, and they noticed that tone in your voice and they didn't understand it. And being a highly sensitive kid, that was a big one for their system. And at school, the teacher wanted them to answer a question, but they got it wrong, and everyone laughed. And on the way home, they were really looking forward to seeing you. But when you didn't have the snack that they really like, that you always bring, it really set them over the edge, and they were about to burst. And over time, the emotional bladder gets fuller and fuller and fuller. And when the emotional bladder gets really full, it often starts leaking. Now, this leaking that happens doesn't necessarily mean that the sphincter isn't working. The sphincter is working pretty well, or that it isn't strong enough, or that they need to learn how to contain. It might mean that their emotional bladder is just really full. I don't know about you, but when my bladder is full, it can be really hard to hold the pee in any longer, right? So now here's what's interesting. Most of us weren't taught how to help children release their emotional tension. Many of us were taught how to help children hold it in, especially as they start releasing. And that makes sense because many of our parents were taught to do the same thing with their own feelings, right? Emotional management, so we've been taught, has nothing to do with emotional expression. It only has to do with emotional containment, right? Well, that's what most of us have been taught. So when our child starts crying or complaining or expressing their feelings, a part of us says, try to calm down, look on the bright side, be grateful, cheer up. Let's think about something else. Look over there. Are you hungry? You're okay. I'll buy you a new one. And all of these responses that try to get our kid to contain their feelings. My fingers are actually working really hard right now to hold all of this in. So, you know, all of these responses are trying to help our child contain these feelings. And that comes from a very good and loving place inside. We have good intentions. We want our child to feel better. And this is where it gets really interesting from an internal family systems or IFS perspective, because now we have parts interacting with parts. A child's overwhelmed part is trying to express something, and the parent has a worried part that's trying to stop that expression. And then the child feels more pressurized inside because they're sensing that we're upset with them. And then the parent feels more urgency to try to contain it. And the child leaks more emotion, and the parent works harder to contain it. And then the child feels even more pressure to contain feelings that are simply seeking a safe place for release. And before long, everyone is not only exhausted, but also kind of feeling a little bit badly about themselves. The child's protectors are working hard. The parents' protectors are working hard. And both systems are trying their very best. But no one ends up feeling very good about themselves. Not the parent and not the child. But what if? What if what the child's system needs most is not more pressure to hold it in, because they've got a big knot of tension inside? What if the child's system doesn't need more pressure to hold the feelings in? What if the child's system needs a safe place to let some of that pressure out, out of their very full emotional bladder, so their system can feel more relaxed and not have to work so hard to hold everything in? It's fully released, so nothing can leak out. And the next time something hard happens, they can easily hold it in. That's powerful. So now let's imagine something different. Let's imagine that the parent starts meeting with an IFS therapist and starts exploring their own internal system. They deepen relationship with their own parts that feel overwhelmed by their child's big feelings. And they bring healing to the parts of themselves that weren't listened to when they were young. Bringing healing to their own inner child helps them feel more calm, clear, compassionate, curious, and confident, even when their child out there expresses really big, loud, unpleasant feelings. Their outer child's parts no longer activate their own inner parts as much anymore. What a relief. And that's what many parents who explore IFS therapy find. And so the parent is more able to stay calm and listen and help the child move the feelings through more confidently and calmly. And so over time, the child discovers, when my big feelings start coming out, mom listens. Dad stays calm and comes close. They help me get these big, hard feelings out of my body, even though I might resist all along the way because it's so uncomfortable for me to feel these big, hard, uncomfortable feelings. And so I start noticing that my grown-up isn't scared of my feelings anymore. My parent isn't pressuring me to stuff my feelings down or make them go away quickly. My grown up isn't trying to fix or solve the whole situation for me immediately. They seem to trust me to move these feelings through my body. That's the child's perspective. And so over time, something deep begins to shift. The child starts bringing more feelings into the safety of the parent child relationship. And from the outside, it can certainly look like there are suddenly a whole lot more feelings. But another possibility is that there's now more safety to bring the feelings that have been stuck inside forward so they can be processed and ultimately released. The feelings may have been there already. The child may have simply been stuffing them down, carrying them all alone in a very full emotional bladder that's leaking all the time, trying their best to hold in all of that emotion and not being able to do a very good job of it, disappointing everyone in the process, including themselves, lowering their sense of confidence and self-worth. Children who have a full emotional bladder often do leak emotion all the time, and they tend not to feel very good about themselves because of that, and because of all of the negative feedback they keep on receiving from the people around them. And when children begin feeling safer, more relaxed, and more confident in themselves and in their ability to process their feelings or simply feel their feelings, they might begin releasing more of the emotional tension they've been carrying for so long inside on their own. And parents just sometimes understandably mistake this as a sign that their kids are getting worse at regulating their emotions while the parents are listening. But it might mean that trust is growing, that emotional healing is happening, and that soon, with more and more offloading of the tension and processing of the big, hard, stuck feelings, not less, but more, soon parents will see a more relaxed and more emotionally regulated child. A child who can listen better, a child who can learn more easily, a child who looks more relaxed and more settled in their own body. This is what over 25, 30 years of anecdotal research has shown. So let's flip this around for a moment to make it more real for us as adults. Let's imagine you had a really hard day. Let me see if I can find my balloon. Where did you go? I can't find it. Oh, geez. Sorry. That was loud. I hope you're all okay. Um, let's imagine that you had a really hard day. Your partner wasn't around to help with the morning routine. Your child was cranky when they woke up and you weren't sure why. Your kid didn't want to eat the eggs that you made, even though you lovingly made them, and you even bought a new kind of cheese for them to try, thinking about them and only them. And then they didn't want to go to school that day, and you didn't know why. And then they were taking forever to put on their shoes, no matter what you tried to help them. And then on the way home, they had a complete meltdown when you brought a new snack. You brought them a new snack that you brought just for them. And that was really hard because at that point you were driving in the car and they were so loud and they were so mad at you and they were kicking and screaming. And now your emotional bladder is totally full. So let's say you come home to your safe place, to your safe person, and you start to offload your tension by talking to your partner about some of the challenges of the day. And imagine that your partner says, "Oh, come on, really? With all you have, you're going to complain about that? You're so ungrateful. Just cheer up. Focus on the positive. Here, I'll give you some ice cream. Is that better now? No? Okay, well, go into the other room by yourself until you can come back in and be happy again. How does that feel? Will that help you release the emotional tension that you have inside? Now imagine someone says, "That sounds really hard. I get it. Tell me more. That makes sense. I'm right here. Keep going, sweetie. Tell me all about it." Notice what happens in your body. For many of us, something softens. It's safe to release. And the pressure inside of us begins to release. And we feel better, more relaxed. No one solved the problem or distracted us from our feelings or took the struggles away. Someone simply connected with us, empathized with us, stayed with us as we emptied our own very full emotional bladder, gave us the message that we were okay and that they cared about us, even as we expressed our big feelings about the hard things we went through. That warm, caring presence is often what we need as adults when we go through hard things. And what if that's exactly what our children need too? But it's hard for us as parents when our child is activated because the activated and overwhelmed parts of them tend to activate parts of us. Their overwhelmed parts will naturally activate our overwhelmed parts. However, it is possible for us as parents, sometimes with the help of a professional, to do a U-turn, to come back home to ourselves on the inside and connect with something deeper within us, a place of curiosity, compassion, and connection, a place of calm confidence. We call this self energy in IFS. When self is leading, our self energy brings out the self energy in our children. And in this case, self energy might sound something like this. That makes sense. Yep, I'm listening. And they're kicking and screaming in the back of the car. Maybe we pull over because we're activated a little bit and it's hard to listen when we're driving. And we open the door and we say, "Keep going, sweetie. You're safe. I'm right here." It's calm, spacious, confident. Self energy trusts that feelings are simply feelings and that the child will feel better after releasing their feelings. Self trusts that emotional tension can be released and witnessed. Self trusts that our connection helps support the process of our child's emotional release. Self trusts that after offloading tension, a child's body returns to a deeper place of calm for longer and longer periods of time. Self trusts that one of the best ways to help a child regulate emotionally is to help them empty their emotional bladder more fully so they can contain their feelings more easily when they do need to contain them. Just like a real bladder, we do need to be able to contain, but we also need to be able to release fully and regularly in order to be healthy. So, now I'm going to slow this down, and I'd like to invite you to pause for a moment and just gently ask yourself, what happens inside of me when my child's feelings get bigger as I listen to them and validate their feelings? What parts show up in me? Maybe a worried part, a fixer solve it part, a helpless, overwhelmed part, maybe a young part that wasn't listened to herself or hisself, a discouraged part. Can you notice those parts? See if you can appreciate how hard many of those parts have been working, or maybe how alone some of those parts might feel. And can you offer them a little curiosity, a little warmth, a little compassion? Just notice. Sometimes our own parts become frightened as our child's feelings begin coming out into the light. And it helps to be with our own parts first before we can truly be with our child and their big feelings. So feel free to pause the video if you'd like a little more time with us. When you're feeling ready, I'd like to close with a letter and some key takeaways. This letter is written from the perspective of a child to their parent. Dear Mom and Dad, I know it seems like I'm more upset lately. I know there are more tantrums, more tears, more moments when I show you my very big, loud, and upset feelings. And I know that can be confusing, but I want you to know something. The feelings you're seeing now aren't new. Some of them have been inside of me for a very long time. I'm just starting to feel a little safer bringing them to you, safer letting you see them, safer letting you help me move them through my little body. When you stay close, it helps me move them through. But I want you to know that when they move through me, it's a little overwhelming for me and a lot scary and very uncomfortable for me. So I'm going to try to push you away by pushing your buttons and saying the things I know will make you upset and want to go away because it all just feels like too much for me. But the truth is that I need you more in those moments than I've ever needed you ever before, because it's really overwhelming for me to feel these big, hard feelings. And when you stay by my side, even when I'm pushing you away, I learn something important. I learn that my feelings matter. I learn that I don't have to face them alone. I learn that I can be upset and still be loved. And little by little, I begin trusting that my feelings can move through me. And the more that happens, with your support by my side, the less afraid I feel of my own feelings, and the more confidence I have to face them and feel them on my own. So, Mom and Dad, thank you for listening. Thank you for staying. Thank you for believing in me and for still loving me, even as I feel my big, loud, hard feelings, especially then. Love, your highly sensitive child. Let's just take a moment to let that letter land. Yeah. And here are some key takeaways. Children sometimes become more emotionally expressive when they feel safer. What looks like more emotion may sometimes be old, stuck feelings finally finding safety to be expressed. Parents and children both have parts that become activated around big feelings. Emotional tension often releases more easily when children feel safe, understood, and connected. Trust grows when children discover they don't have to carry feelings alone. And children are often more able to listen, learn, and follow directions after offloading their big feelings with a loving witness. In closing, I want to remind you of this, dear parents. Sometimes we might become discouraged when we see more feelings inside our kids. But what appears to be more emotion may sometimes be a sign that trust is growing, a sign that connection is deepening, a sign that your child is beginning to bring more of themselves into relationship with you, their safe person in life. And that is meaningful work, not only for you and your child, but for future generations to come. Because every time a child learns that difficult feelings can be shared, supported, and carried together, they receive a gift that they can carry into adulthood and perhaps one day pass on to their own children. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for doing some of the most important work in the world, raising children and creating safe spaces to help them offload their feelings so they can truly feel good again from the inside out. And I'll see you next Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific.